Good morning, flexible women. And okay, you can hear me. All right, well, good morning. I will send you the link. This is just frozen, and it's a very powerful 1 minute and 22 seconds. And this is the immediate past president of United Women in Faith nationally, a layperson like just one of us. And she explains that God wants us to do two things, that love is unconditional and that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. And then she says, so racism is just not what Jesus wanted. and that is why we're here today. So we'll send you that link, or maybe it'll come up later, what have you. Okay, so good morning. I'm Wendy Campbell, the president of the United Women of Faith of the Horizon Texas Conference. This is the group that is presenting this event, and this is our largest racial justice event ever because it's our first one. Yay! It's also our smallest, just the first one. Okay. It is our first event after North Texas, Central Texas, and Northwest Texas unified as of just a few weeks ago, January 1st, 2025. So we now cover a much larger area, so thank you all for driving here. A few of you live in the area, but many people drove. So thank you, and it'll be well worth your time in the car. Since we cover a bigger area, we just have to acknowledge that we're still getting to know each other. You know, figuring out, oh, she's the one that always does blank. We're still figuring that out. And so eventually we will start to recognize all the faces. You know, United Women in Faith is a national-based, faith-based membership organization founded 155 years ago. All women of the Christian faith are welcome to be members and participate with us. No church membership or age requirements at all. So we are so glad that you chose to be with us here today and grateful for the lovely weather. It's a beautiful day in this house of the Lord. We have live stream who's been patiently waiting for it to start, and I'm assuming they're on. And so the cameras, there's a new place for me too. I'm going to suggest, there's a camera back here. If everyone turn and wave, and we'll say welcome to those people at home. And this will also be on recording, so yay. We're so glad you're with us too. Okay, so Pastor Armando, yes. And Ann Cruz, you come up.
Well, I'm Pastor Armando Alvarado, the pastor here at New Riverside, and we're just so excited that you are here with us today, this morning. We don't usually have such a big crowd like we do today. It's just awesome. And so we are a bilingual English and Spanish congregation. And if you don't know Spanish, you're learning Spanish. And if you don't know English, you're learning English. So it's just a blessing, because that's how God put us together. So welcome, bienvenidos todos que están aquí, and we hope that you have a great time. Thank you.
And I'm Ann Cruz. I'm the president of New Riverside United Women of Faith, and we want to welcome you, and we're so honored to be here to host this event for you. Thank you.
And a tiny little bit of, you're not next, a tiny little bit of housekeeping is we are a big crowd, and there are restrooms sprinkled throughout. I've seen them. So if you need to go, just get up and go, because we don't all want to stand in line before lunch, okay? Okay, you're not.
Good morning. We begin our worship by centering us in place. In the long history of the Comanche, the Kickapoo, the Tawakoni, the Wichita, and the Jumanos, who steward this land. We repent for the harms done and give thanks to the first peoples of this land. We offer our respect to those ancestors who may be interred in this land. We lift up the lands in which we live, work, and play, and the indigenous peoples who were here first and their descendants. May we honor and remember that their history and commit ourselves to action, seeking justice and reparations for the harm that was done and continues to be done.
Well, good morning. Such a nice response. Wendy asked me to speak on why we're here today, and as we would have seen and Wendy mentioned in the video, we're here because as United Women in Faith, racial justice work is all about love. Everything hinges on that little four-letter word. With all of our hearts, minds, and strength, we're called to love God and to love our neighbor. And as we listen to the panelists and the session speakers' messages on welcoming the immigrant, caring deeply for our pregnant sisters, loving and protecting all of our children in our public schools, let's listen for ways to open our hearts, minds, and arms to the unconditional and radical love of Jesus. Together, let's discover ways that we can serve as a force for change so that everyone feels welcome and at home in God's kingdom here on earth. Will you join me in a litany for welcome and inclusion? Blessed be God who loves all creation.
God's love has no exceptions. Hallelujah.
The Sisters of United Women in Faith are the body of Christ, justice-seeking, bread-breaking, song-singing, risk-taking.
We are the body of Christ.
Baptized in one spirit, we are members of one body.
Many and varied in culture, sexuality, age, class, and ability, we are members of Christ's beautiful body.
None of us can say to another, I have no need of you.
For only together can we find wholeness.
None of us can say to another, I will not care for you.
For we are connected like muscle and bone. If one suffers, we all suffer. If one rejoices, we all rejoice.
Come in. All are welcome. Come into worship. Come with your longings, your questions, and your fears.
Come with your dreams of a better day, one with dignity and safety for all. We welcome you.
Thanks be to God, who in Christ has made us one. Oops.
Yolanda, where's Yolanda?
Yeah.
Paz sea con ustedes. La lectura en esta mañana. Oh, you want me to start in English? Okay, we'll do that. Peace be with you. I will be reading from the Contemporary English Version. From the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verses 1 to 3. Listen to God's word. Keep being concerned about each other as the Lord's followers should. Be sure to welcome strangers into your home. By doing this, some people have welcomed angels as guests without even knowing it. Remember the Lord's people who are in jail and be concerned for them. Don't forget those who are suffering, but you imagine that you are suffering with them. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Y ahora de la versión Palabra de Dios para Todos, del libro de los Hebreos, capítulo 13, versículos del 1 al 3. Escuchemos la palabra de Dios. Ustedes son hermanos en Cristo, así que sigan tratándose unos a otros con amor. Den hospedaje a los que lo necesitan, pues recuerden que algunos que así lo hicieron sin darse cuenta hospedaron ángeles. Acuérdense de los que están en la cárcel, como si ustedes también estuvieran encarcelados con ellos. Tampoco se olviden de los que sufren. Trátenlos como si ustedes mismos pasaran por el mismo sufrimiento. Esta es la palabra de Dios.
Sit down.
Good morning. So I'm your song leader today. I'm Pam Pinkerton Whitley, and so as being your song leader, I'm going to ask you all to stand and raise your voices as loud as you did when you read that litany this morning. The words are going to be on the screen, and so please join us in singing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit, you got to say gonna, it's not going. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 And open the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. I'm gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. Louder. I'm gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. And open the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna moan when the Spirit says moan. I'm gonna moan when the Spirit says moan. I'm gonna moan when the Spirit says moan. And open the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna shout when the Spirit says shout. I'm gonna shout when the Spirit says shout. I'm gonna shout when the Spirit says shout. And open the Spirit of the Lord. Oh, I thought we were gonna clap and do all that good stuff, but anyway, thank you.
Good morning. As we prepare our hearts for God, let's all take a deep breath, put our feet on the floor, hands by our side, or wherever it feels comfortable. Gracious and loving God, as we come together today, open our eyes that we may see the needs of others. Open our ears that we may hear their cries. Open our hearts so that they are not without help. Oh God, let us not be afraid to defend the weak because of the anger of the strong, nor afraid to defend the poor because of the anger of the rich. Oh God, open our eyes, ears, and hearts, and show us where peace, justice, comfort, love, hope, and faith are needed, and use us to bring them to those places today and every day. In the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being, amen.
Thank you, everyone who helped center us with that opening worship, if you will. As United Women in Faith, we're focused on missions, improving the lives of women, children, and youth locally and around the world. Together, we advocate for social justice, and we hope to inspire, influence, and impact local and global communities. Next slide. God invites us all to his kingdom, and in the past year, we've studied how we can feel welcome in his love and in his sovereignty and at home there. Of course, we all have different life experiences, and we don't all agree on everything. No. One of our national priorities is the criminality of people of color. I believe that we are all united, though, today in being concerned about current racial justice issues. So today, we are going to focus specifically on immigration, the disparities in maternal health, and the school-to-prison pipeline. We believe love and action can change the world, and that's why we're here. As you listen to the speakers, put your questions on index cards. We had a few, but we're not going to do it that way, so write it down or something. Put it in here. Yeah, we'll circle around at the end, but we're going to do questions and Q&A at the end of this, of all three speakers, because they may tie together more. Okay. Our first speaker will be Minerva Briones from San Antonio. I've known her for years, for some time, as the president of United Women in Faith of the Rio, Texas conference. She is here today as a person with an immigration story that started in 1983. Now a widow, she has been a pastor's wife and is mother to 2 daughters, 2 great son-in-laws, and 4 granddaughters. Minerva has served as the executive director of a community center and has been involved in Cairo's prison ministry, serving at the female prison. For 6 years, she has been volunteering at the Interfaith Welcome Coalition that is at the Greyhound bus station. That's where ICE drops off the refugees or asylum seekers from the detention centers. Volunteers like Minerva give them a backpack full of essentials and a sack lunch for their trip, and off they go and help them with their bus itinerary, and usually they're making it to their destination in 3 days. Wherever they go, they will have to face the immigration judge, and probably, she says, they will be deported. She says it's heartbreaking just listening to their stories. I can say that yesterday I was going about my usual routine, and I was in a small business, and somebody came in and wanted to talk to the manager who wasn't there. It was a tenseful time, and they had some handout about ICE. And then I read in the headlines yesterday that a 11-year-old girl committed suicide, but they knew that she had been bullied because racism. I mean, because she was Hispanic and maybe her parents didn't have papers. Anyway, whatever your situation is, those things are a concern. And they're gonna, we're all gonna feel it, I guess is what I'm saying. So, Minerva, tell us some more. Sorry. I miss them.
It was surprising for me that I was going to be the first one. Well, I'm breaking the ice for all of you. Like Wendy said, I work in this nonprofit organization, and when we were talking, she said, it would be nice for you to share your own story. I am an immigrant myself. I was born in Nuevo Laredo, it's the border. And my daughter Abby, many of you know her, she was born there too. So she was 6 months old when we immigrated to this country. As my husband, late husband, was a pastor from the Rio Grande Conference, they offered him a job here in this area in Garland, back in '83. So at that time, they didn't speak a lot of Spanish around this area of Texas, right? So I knew a little bit of English because I was from the border. And but that time, it wasn't so hard to be legal here with the papers. With his letter from the superintendent, and in less than 2 months, we were legal in this country. So that was a blessing compared to whatever these people they're going through with the immigration laws. My husband sent me first, you go ask and you tell them, because I was the one that knew more English, right? So the need of communication made me learn English, and I'm here, and I'm so proud of that. As soon as my daughter had the age, Abby, she became a citizen, and I never wanted to become a citizen. I said, no, I don't want to become a citizen. And everybody was telling me, so you can vote. That's the right that you have. And you know what changed my mind? When I attended the legislative event in Austin. I understood the importance of the vote and what we can make a change if we raise our voices. So Abby told me, Mom, I will fill out the application, because she used to be a volunteer in J-Fund in San Antonio. So she knew how to do that. She filled out my application. I learned the 100 questions that they tell us to learn. And out of the 100, they ask you only 10. And out of the 10, you can pass with 6. So every morning, while I was walking, I was listening to the questions, and I learned it. And this was in October of 2019. Then the pandemic came. My interview was postponed and postponed and postponed because of the pandemic. In May of 2020, I had the interview. They asked me the questions. I passed, and we had the ceremony of citizenship. And that time, we were only 10. Only 2 women, the rest were men. And a difference of when Abby became a citizen, it was a beautiful ceremony with more than 500 people in an awesome auditorium. And we could be with them and cheering them, but in this time I was by myself. Also Lita, I remember I took a selfie with, in my background was a Statue of Liberty with the American flag. I took a selfie. And the officer says, Señora, the pictures are not allowed in a federal building. It was too late, but I have my memory when I became a citizen. And that year, in 2020, I voted for the first time. The old administration, right? We changed the old administration, but now he's back. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that. Only 4 more years. I want to share how I became a volunteer at WC. Literally, the Lord called me to serve there because it was in February of 2019 when we had our special general conference in St. Louis, and I was an alternate delegate, but I was able to attend. That was an honor for me, the first time to be there. So my flight was going to leave at 11 in the morning from San Antonio to Dallas, and then to St. Louis. And then close to 11, I heard this flight has been delayed. For this, all the delegates, we form a WhatsApp group to be in touch with each other and just to tell where we're going to meet and when we get there and all that. So I was telling them my flight is being delayed. And then the hour passed, and then they said 2 more hours. And to make the story short, my flight was canceled. And then I was telling them, everybody, right, what's going on? And then everybody was telling me, oh, everything happened for a reason. The Lord has his plans, and we know that. But I was the one stuck in the airport all day. To change my flight, I had to move to the other terminal. We only have 2 in San Antonio. To the other terminal, and my flight was going to leave at 11 at night that day, and then go to Chicago, spend the night there, and then in the morning go to St. Louis. So to change my flight, I have to go to the other terminal. And when I was coming down the stairs, I saw in this side families, moms with children, and I just saw them, and I kept walking through the restroom, and then when I was getting out of the restroom, drying my hands, I literally heard the Lord saying, Minerva, that's why I left you here, so you can see them. Go and pray for them. And I did. I approached the families, and for a stranger to approach you speaking your language was very awesome for them. Their eyes were like this. I said, my name is Minerva, mi nombre es Minerva. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿De dónde vienes? ¿A dónde vas? Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Most of them were from Central America, and they were going to different places. And I asked him, can I say a prayer for you, with you? And they said yes. I just put my hand in their shoulder, and I just say encouraging words, right? That the Lord had blessed them, came here to this country safe, and he was going to be with them in the rest of their journey. And every time that I finished the prayer, the moms were with tears in their eyes. And I moved to the next one, the next one, the next one. And then I turned the other side and then see some ladies with this vest. So I said, I want to do that. So when I came back, I did the research and I found them, I called them, and they said, somebody's going to contact you, right? As a volunteer in the airport where I knew about that ministry, and nobody called me. And then I found out that in Facebook that that ministry was in the Greyhound bus station, and that they needed bilingual volunteers, and it was going to be an orientation that Thursday. So I went. The orientation was in Travis Park, Methodist Church, and I told Sister Denise and one, because we are from all different churches. I told her my story, and she said, well, Minerva, the Lord needs you here. And I'm there since then. And for me, it's been thank you. The experience is just to feel the gratefulness, their heart for whatever we do, little things, right? Like I brought this little doll. The ladies from Travis Park started this ministry. They named it Puente Pals. They do this with other teachers. I have this with embroidered eyes because one of the members in my church, they do this, and he did this for me. So we give one to each little kid, and they embrace them. They can see like a pillow, a companion. It is comforting for them, and they're so happy. I've seen boys, boys will be boys. They just wrestle with them and throw them. But that's another ministry that they do in the bus station. When they get there, we welcome them. How is to be welcome in this time of in our lives? People that they're going through a lot of horrible things, and they are here. And once they're here, it's going to be hard. I always tell them it won't be easy. It won't be easy, but everybody that I have been in touch with, they have a great, big faith. Always they say, we are here by the grace of God. That's awesome, just to listen to them. But I have different stories, many stories that I have heard. But it depends on the nationality, the country that they're coming from, because we don't only help Central Americans. We receive a lot of people. We receive from Africa, Congo. I help a family from Ukraine. And that family, they didn't know English. We were communicating with the Google Translate. And young couple with 2 kids, they came. They were going to Chicago, but they had a plane ticket that the families buy for them, because that's another misunderstanding, that people think that the government pay for their travel. For some reason they think that. No, their sponsors, family or friends pay them the ticket so that way they can go. This family from Ukraine, the 2 kids were coming with flip-flops. And the flight was going to be the next day in noon, and they were trying to get in the bus from San Antonio to Austin and then spend the night in the airport and then go. And I called one of my friends from the Kairos Prison Ministry that I serve also. She lives in Austin, and I called her, can you go pick them up and take them to the airport? I don't know, you don't want to know how many disappointed I am, because when I ask for that kind of help, I just don't get it, don't receive it. She had a reason. She doesn't live in Austin anymore. She lives in New Braunfels, but she was the one that told me, Minerva, it's better for somebody taken from San Antonio to the Austin airport, because the bus station is in northwest and the airport is southeast. So what I did, I told them, I can take you to Austin tomorrow morning. And they look at each other, husband and wife, and they said, should we trust this lady that we don't know them, right? And they're right? If she doesn't come and we lose the ticket, they're thinking that, right? I said, don't worry, I have done this before. I will be here tomorrow morning to get you to Austin. And I did, but when I went home, I told Abby what happened, and she went to Sarah's, my granddaughter, the closet, and got a pair of shoes and socks, and she ran next door neighbor, she has boys, and she got shoes and socks. And when I took it in the morning, when I picked them up, they put their shoes and they fitted perfectly to both of them. They were so grateful. And I took him to the airport in Austin. I took the toll road, so I didn't get through the city, and I dropped them off. And when they were leaving, they just put in the phone for me to read, and they said, you have made us very happy. That's what we are there for. Different situations. We know, I know that the Lord works for me to be there for a specific reason, in all the rest of the volunteers, right? But I'm sharing my story. Unfortunately, the change today, right now, is different with this new administration. They were not receiving more people because in the border, they stopped them. They don't process them anymore. They just turn them back. All the people that there were in the detention centers or in the shelter that we have in San Antonio, that is closed. Where we are helping now is asylum seekers that are already in the process, and they are coming to their check-ins, to appointments. And Thursday, I helped a young man from Austin. I took him to San Antonio to his ICE appointment, and that was weird that nobody was waiting outside. And when we got into the door, the officer says, all today's appointments, they're canceled because of the weather. It was very cold, but it wasn't wet or anything. So they were turning people away. And my worry was, how about if they say, the people that were appointed for today, they didn't show up. And then they have an order of deportation. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. Things that they aren't supposed to, but that's what they're doing. So that's panic, anxiety among them. This young man that I took, he was shaking. And I said a prayer with him before we left the car. And he was shaking when I touched his hand. And after I prayed, he was calmed down. So we went, and they told him, come back next week, Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to noon. But yesterday I got a text from his lawyer. He said that they put another appointment for August. So they had to wait. So that takes years. The other thing that we're doing, just to finish, we have a book, and it's in our display there. It's called Traveler's Mercies, and all the volunteers wrote some stories that we heard that touched our hearts. And this is on sale for $20, and everything, all the proceeds going to IWC. And I want to share one story that I wrote. I titled this, He Needed a Hug. One morning, a young man arrived from Laredo. He needed to borrow a phone to call his uncle who was going to purchase a ticket to Houston. I let him use my phone, and he was able to get a ticket to Houston at 2 p.m. The most common thing that I ask when we have time, because sometimes we were very busy, I asked him, how long were you in detention? And he answered, 3 months. He said, and that's because I was abducted in Nuevo Laredo, and then he told me his sad story. He was working in Monterrey. Those immigrants, they go country to country and they work wherever they are, saving money. So he was working in Monterrey, Mexico, for 6 months, and he was doing good. He was getting money to send to their country family, her mom and the wife and the 4-year-old baby. And then from that side, they sent 7 men to Apodaca, a town close to Monterrey. And while they were there working, the 7 men were abducted. They covered their heads, and they throw them in a van. He was tortured with the most horrible things that you can imagine. They are right when they say that the truth surpasses the fiction. The kidnappers took pictures and videos in his phone so they can send them to his mom to ask the ransom money. Over there, they don't have money. Every time that he said, my mom doesn't have money, he was hit them with and kicked them with boots, and even they put a machete in their neck. Took picture of that, he showed me the picture, telling him, and this is not sharp, so that it hurts more when we behead you. The kidnappers drove them to Nuevo Laredo, saying, "We are the Zetas, a cartel. And here in Nuevo Laredo, we rule. The police can't do anything about it." And that's what is happening. As he told me this, my eyes were filled with tears. At one point, they changed vehicles, taking 5 of them and to another van, and they left him and another guy in that van. For some reason, that door wasn't shut right. And as weak and hurt as he was, with his hands bound in zip ties, he asked God with all his heart, "Give me strength, please help me." And he kicked the doors as hard as he could, and the doors opened. And they ran, and he told the other guy, you go separate ways. And he said while he was running, as he was praying with all his heart, "Please, Lord, blind them so they can find us." And he ran and ran and ran, and he ended up in the bridge, International Bridge. And in the bridge, they have in the middle of the bridge, they have a checkpoint. Because, if they put one step in American soil, they can apply for the asylum. They saw them the way they were. He was running, all, I imagine, bleeding and tied, right? And they let them go. And at the checkpoint of the other agents, they received them. They sent them to the hospital. They put him into counseling, because can you imagine that trauma, right? And he finally was released and ended up in San Antonio with us. I asked him if I could give him a hug, and he stood up, and as we hugged, he started crying like a baby. And I was crying with him too. And I told him that I was very sorry for whatever they did to him. Especially this story hit me particularly hard because it happened in Nuevo Laredo. That is my hometown. After he arrived in Houston, he called me and told me that he arrived well. So there are a lot of stories like this. A lady, she arrived shaking, and we put him a blanket, we gave him a jacket, she was shaking. She crossed the river with her best friend, that they came all the journey from Venezuela. The best friend, the girl, she had a baby, and they went through all this together, and when they crossed the river took her away with the baby, and they drowned. And she was so traumatized for that. Can you imagine? All that they went through, and like that, they just died. They're risking their own lives just to be here. And when they shared their stories, I told them, thank God that you are alive to come share your story, right? Many don't have that opportunity to be here. We don't have the questions right, right? No. Wendy asked me what it feels to be welcome. How do you feel in this world to feel welcome? Just a smile, to receive a smile that they can feel at home. They're coming for a better life in this country. That's why we came to this country, better opportunity, better opportunity for studies. My 2 girls, daughters of immigrants, they're doing great. They're professionals. My youngest daughter, she's a social worker in a hospital, children's hospital in San Antonio, and she, as bilingual, she's helped immigrant moms having babies there. And Abby,
she's very involved with the women, and she's working after 10 years of being a mom at home. She started working in this construction company, and for her luck, that company works for Homeland Security. She said, "Mom, I don't want to find out that they were the ones that put the wire in the river." So she doesn't know about the project that they work for the government. They're only numbers, right? But she's working there part-time. So we are immigrants, and we are here serving the Lord wherever we go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minerva. That was wonderful. Okay, next we have Cecily R. Smith, the founder, visionary, and CEO of Abide Women's Health Services, which was established in 2017 in South Dallas to improve birth outcomes in underserved communities. Under her leadership, Abide provides accessible, holistic healthcare and support, earning recognition as a perinatal safe spot and accredited clinic, while honoring the legacy of Black midwives. I recently got to tour the facility, the clinic, and was thoroughly impressed at what they do and the care they provide. Cecily, who has over 2 decades of leadership experience and over a decade as a maternal and racial justice activist, is personally committed to the cause and manages major fundraising efforts as well and program development, including a $2.5 million capital campaign. Her work and its impact has been featured on ABC News Nightline, Dallas Morning News, and Black Enterprise. And she has received numerous accolades, including the 2020 Nonprofit of the Year Award and recognition as a Public Voices Fellow in 2022. In 2024, she and Abide were also chosen as the 2024 Conference Mission Project by the United Women of Faith of North Texas. So many of us do already know about Abide, but she's going to tell us lots more. Despite her many roles that I've told you about, Cecily values her most fulfilling roles as mother to her 4 children and wife to her husband, Ramon. Tell us more, Cecily.
Oh wow, we're talking about some deep stuff today, right? So why don't we take a moment to take a breath, okay? So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take a deep breath in for 4 counts, and we're gonna hold for 4 counts, and then we're gonna exhale for 4 counts. We're gonna do that 3 times, okay? Kind of try to reset our nervous systems a bit, okay? And breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. One more time, breathe in. Breathe out. Minerva, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. So, I'm going to start off by reading Micah 6, 1 through 8. Listen to what the Lord says. Stand up, plead my case before the mountains. Let the hills hear what you have to say. Hear, you mountains, the Lord's accusations. Listen, you everlasting foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a case against his people. He is lodging a charge against Israel. My people, what have I done to you? How have I burdened you? Answer me. I brought you up out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. I sent Moses to lead you, also Aaron and Miriam. My people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, plotted and what Balaam, son of Beor, answered. Remember your journey from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Women United in Faith, I love you so much. You are acting justly, and you're walking humbly, and you're showing mercy. And I am seeing it. I've seen it throughout this entire year, the past year of working with you, and I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you continue to do to serve, to just acknowledge the wrongdoings that are going on in this country, and to actually put love in action. So I just wanted to acknowledge you. Thank you. Next slide, please. Isn't that precious? Next slide. I'm going to say that a lot. There's a lot of slides. And that's me. She's already read about me. Keep going. So I like to move around a little bit. Yeah. So these are my baby. Ooh. Oh, can I use that wireless? Oh, can you go back to my picture of my babies, please? Do I turn this one on? I got it. Hello? Hi. All right, how are y'all doing today? Okay, we shook that stress off, you know? All right, so these are my babies. These are my babies. Sarai, she's 11. Emmanuel, he's the one that made me a mama. He's 13. The one in the middle doing, that's me, that's my twin. That's Eli. And then the one on the end is Ezra. And they are the reason why I do everything that I do in maternal health. All that I do with racial justice is because I want them to grow up in a world where they're free from harm and danger, you know? Next slide, please. Abide is an organization that I founded back in 2017. We're what you call a maternal justice organization, and our mission is to improve birth outcomes in communities with the lowest quality of care. And we do this by offering health care and complementary services that are easily accessible, holistic, evidence-based, and free from judgment. Our vision is to provide a healthcare system committed to the liberation and restoration of marginalized communities. Next slide, please. So this is my team, and I don't know if anyone is in here. I don't see any members of my team in here right now. You're gonna meet some members later on today, but this team is operated by women of color, you know. We have some white people that, you know, volunteer and help support us a bit, you know. But we are midwifery-led organization. Our providers are licensed midwives, and part of our goal is really the restoration of midwifery care in this country. Because at one point, Black midwives, the granny midwives, they were catching everybody's babies, everybody's, even their enslavers' babies. And, you know, through injustice, you know, right now, only 7% of midwives in this country are Black, only 7%. And so part of our mission is to improve that number, to restore the wisdom, the ancient wisdom of Black midwives. And so, yeah, that's a picture of my team right there. Next slide. And then, of course, there's some of our board members. Next slide. So, let me tell you this. I founded Abide back, well, no, I didn't found Abide. You know that baby girl, my daughter that was in that picture? I was holding her back in 2013. I was holding her, she was just an infant, and I was at a birthing conference in Tarrant County. Yeah, right here in Tarrant County. And that's when I learned about the disparities in Black infant and maternal health outcomes. I had no idea. No idea. I had some issues getting pregnant, but I had pretty good pregnancies, and I didn't have any trauma with my pregnancies. I didn't get into this work because of trauma. I learned at this conference about the disparities in Black infant maternal health. I learned that Black women are dying at 3 to 4 times the rate of white women due to childbirth-related causes. And I learned that Black babies are dying at 2 to 3 times the rate of white babies before they reach their first birthday. And so that right there, you know, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? But when you do know, we are obligated to do something. Of course, we have to listen to the calling of the Lord to figure out what the Lord wants us to do. But that moment, the Lord really planted a seed in my heart to do something, you know? And so some of our goals our primary goal is to reduce infant and maternal mortality in this country, to reduce preterm births, to increase the number of, increase babies' birth weight, and increase breastfeeding rates, and increase the number of Black midwives and birth workers of color. So at the end of the day, we want our babies born at term. We want fat, juicy babies, you know? We want them born at term, but we also want their mothers to live to see them. Right now in this country, 90% of these deaths are preventable. Catch that? Let that sink in for you. So what does that mean though? If we know that 90% of these deaths are preventable, that means that something can be done, right? So, enter Abide. Next slide, please. Oh, look at that baby. This is one of our clients' babies. Oh, yeah, keep going. So, yeah, next slide. So, when I founded Abide, what I did is I did some research to learn a bit more about what's going on in South Dallas. I'm actually from Fort Worth, so this is home for me. But our clinic is off of MLK, right there in sunny South Dallas, where the people are sunny. And I did some research, and I learned that South Dallas is a maternal toxic zone. A maternal toxic zone is an area where it is unsafe for a woman to be pregnant, to breastfeed, and to raise a child, okay? There's a grand midwife by the name of Jenny Joseph. She coined the term maternal toxic zone. And she's also the founder of the JJ model, which is a patient-centered model of care, and that is what we provide at Abide in our clinic in South Dallas. We're also part of the National Perinatal Task Force. I encourage you to look into the National Perinatal Task Force because it's made up of Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led birth workers that are strategically and specifically geared toward providing safe spaces for people of color. And those safe spaces can look like a childbirth education class, a doula, you know, a call, like a phone line, a hotline that you can call to get support. And it can look like Abide. We are a perinatal safe spot, and we have a brick and mortar clinic in South Dallas. Next slide, please. We'll probably just skip this. Oh, I'll go really quickly, but these are some old statistics. I definitely need to update this slide. But when I did some research to learn more about what's going on in South Dallas, and to be able to identify as a maternal toxic zone, these are some of the things that I found The projected share of Dallas County's population that will be people of color in 2050 is 88%. There are some major wage disparities here. The average black worker earns 54 cents for every dollar earned by a white worker in Dallas County. And it's even more drastic for black women. 43% of Dallas County residents live with an income less than 2 times the poverty level. 21% of residents still lack health insurance in Dallas, and the chronic health conditions cause more than 75% of all deaths in Dallas back in 2014. But these numbers have increased. They just keep rising. That's the one thing that whenever I go to these health assessments, we have so many health assessments. And the thing that drives me nuts about hearing these health assessments and meeting up with a bunch of people and learning all the stats is, what are we doing about it? Like, I don't want to go to another meeting to keep hearing the same thing and the statistics keep going down, or they keep increasing. And so we've got to figure out a way, we know the data, how do we improve the outcomes? So when I learned about everything going on in South Dallas, I'm talking about the highest, especially amongst black people, is the highest in heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer, our teen pregnancy rate. Next slide, please. South Dallas actually has one of the largest, the highest teen pregnancy rates in the country. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm gonna skip that. Here we go. So this gives you a bit of a visual of what we're looking at as far as the disparities go. And South Dallas teen pregnancy rate, 96 to 120 out of 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 19, compared to the national rate of 27 out of 1,000. Nothing wrong with we love teens. We love teens. And the thing about it is, I want to encourage you, women, United Women in Faith, to be a welcoming space for teen moms. And I'm going to shout out to, oh my goodness, there's a ministry here in Tarrant County that is specific to teen moms. Embrace Grace. Embrace Grace. Amy Ford with Embrace Grace, write that down. But they go into churches and they help them create safe spaces for teen moms. And it was founded by by Amy Ford, who was a teen mom and who was shamed in front of her church when she became pregnant. So anyways, I had to put that caveat in there. But here it says only 35% of women in Dallas County have prenatal care in their first trimester, and that's something that we just have to address. Oftentimes they don't really know. Some people don't know, so next slide, please. I kind of shared this a little bit, but a perinatal safe spot provides access to a willing, supportive, and culturally congruent person, team, and environment. And we connect them with a wide variety of resources, trusted resources or referrals for medical and non-medical care. And so non-medical needs and services, so that pertinent and practical knowledge can be shared both ways, leading to empowerment, better health and safety, and improved outcomes all around. And it's really important, the key words in there is both ways. It's so very important. How often do you go to a doctor and you don't really feel empowered? Pretty often, right, maybe? Or you think that they just know everything? But the thing about it is that we know our bodies. We know our bodies. And one of the main reasons why Black women are dying at disproportionate rates is that they're not being heard and they're not being listened to. And so what we do at Abide is we really empower mothers to advocate for themselves. Now, that's not going to solve everything. You know, it's not. You can advocate for yourself all day long. Serena Williams did. She knew her body. She knew exactly what was going on with her, and they did not listen to her, and she could have died, you know? But it's still important to be able to be confident in yourself and knowing how to advocate for yourself and knowing your rights. Next slide, please. So what sets us apart? Next slide, please. Our approach. We provide holistic care. Okay, we see people as human. I'll let you read that. I don't have to read it for you, do I? If you need me to read it, let me hold your hand up. Okay, because I will. We provide holistic care. You know, we see individuals as image bearers. How about that? Not just as a number, you know? We provide cultural sensitivity. It is very important for us to take a posture of heart, you know, to check ourselves, to provide cultural humility, you know, which is being, you're centering the person in front of you, not yourself, okay? And of course, community involvement. As a nonprofit organization, it's vital that we not operate in silos, that we link arms with other organizations doing similar work, and we share resources. This is how we bump the system. Big system, big healthcare systems. I'm a firm believer that the love of money is truly the root of all evil. It is. It's embedded in every system. It is what is causing so much harm. And us as believers, this is our opportunity to say, no, let's link arms, let's join forces, join together to make change, right? I want to kind of go back to cultural sensitivity real quick. I believe like the number one, or the most important position at Abide is like our receptionist. Sometimes the receptionist is like, you know, it's just the receptionist, they're answering phones. Or what. No. It is the first step. Like when someone comes into our clinic, if we take a posture of cultural humility and we're addressing our biases, because I say if we're human, we all have biases. But if we confront our own biases, that will impact the level of care that client will receive throughout the duration of their pregnancies. If we say, no, we're not judging a person by what type of health insurance they have, by the sound of their name, the spelling of their name, how they're sounding over the phone, those are all things that impact how they are treated throughout the duration of their pregnancy. And that goes for anyone that's pregnant or not, men and women. You know, those biases can lead to death. Next slide, please. And so at our clinic in sunny South Dallas, we provide prenatal and postnatal care. We provide lactation support through our partnership with Mother's Milk Bank of North Texas. And it's called Baby Cafe. Isn't that cute? We have an adolescent health initiative where we are working on, I don't know if it's solid yet, but we are a safe teen pregnancy clinic. It's a safe space for teens to come. We offer free pregnancy testing, of course, postpartum support, lots of resources, and supportive pregnancy care. Supportive pregnancy care is a group prenatal care curriculum that we go through with individuals, and it's an initiative of March of Dimes. So childbirth education and, of course, postpartum support. Postpartum support, also, in addition to that, we offer postpartum doula care. So all of our clients gain access to a postpartum doula through our partnership with Delighted to Doula. Next slide, please. And then, just as I said, we are a JJ Way provider, which is a patient-centered model of care. I'll just read this. The JJ Way model is effective in reducing disparities and improving outcomes because it operates from the premise that every parent who chooses birth wants a healthy baby, and everyone deserves one. Additionally, patients and their family supporters are encouraged to operate the same way and are therefore invited in as an integral part of every prenatal visit. And we operate from these 7 major principles. If you come into our clinic, which I recommend you come for a tour someday, you'll see that we have a love seat or a sofa in every clinic, and it's to provide a safe environment for the birthing person, the woman, to come in and invite their entire, their family, their support system. Next slide. And these are some of the successes. It's really, I'm so excited to share that at Abide, we've had 0 reported infant and maternal deaths. Our preterm birth rate is less than half the national average. And each year, we continue to increase by 30%. So, next slide, please. And so today, you are going to have the opportunity to see our mobile clinic. Our mobile clinic is outside. Yes. So our brick and mortar is in South Dallas, but we are expanding to Tarrant County. And so we're looking for host sites so that we can have our clinic every week in Tarrant County, at least 1 to 2 days a week. Next slide. And these are just some of the benefits of the mobile clinic. Just being able, one of the things that ever since we were founded, people are like, I want to send someone there, but you're just so far away, you know? And I'm just, you know, Tarrant County has, and I believe it's the zip code 76112, which is where I was born and raised, over there on Meadowbrook, but has like the highest infant mortality rate, I believe, in the country. It's one of the highest. And if it's not the country, I definitely know it's in the state of Texas. And so being able to offer these services on the other side of the Trinity, you know, is something that we're really excited to do this year. Next slide, please. Why Tarrant County? There you go. Just be a second to look at that. Next slide, please. And so, what's on the horizon? Our birth center. Our goal is to open a birth center. Why a birth center? Well, continuity of care. Being able to see our clients from the moment they, you know, pre-pregnancy all the way. Because right now, all of our clients go into the hospital setting, and then we see them after they've had their baby. And so the next step this year is that we will begin providing home birth services for those who choose one. And once our birth center open, we'll have that option for our clients as well. There are like some major disparities in access, you know? I strongly believe that every woman should have the option to birth however and wherever she chooses. And often birth centers are for those that have the means, you know? And so being able to provide a birth center in South Dallas, there is not a birth center south of 30, is significant. Next slide, please. So through our collaborative efforts, we can empower women, support families, and expand community education and resources, address infant and maternal disparities, and raise awareness to elevate Abide's capacity. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is just our information here, but just really quickly, I just want to say that I'm being really light. I'm being really light. I love talking about Abide. But at the end of the day, one thing that I hadn't shared with you is that these deaths are 90% preventable, okay? And when we really sit with that, it is stark. It's really stark, and it's really telling of the quality of healthcare and the biases in healthcare that exist that are causing this. Black women deserve so much more than what they've been given. So much more. So much. And so for the future, I know that we're doing these expansions and everything this year, but the ultimate goal for Abide is to be spread across the country, like across the southern sector of the United States. We have South Dallas as our flagship location, our main hub, and right now we're in the process of really just perfecting the model so that we can replicate it. But we are not going to be able to do this without the body. We're not. We can't depend upon big systems, and we certainly can't depend on the federal government. I can tell you right now that the federal funding freeze has hit us. It's hit us, $300,000. We don't know if we're gonna get it, which was promised to us by Eddie Bernice Johnson before she retired and passed. And so we're in a position right now where we're trying to figure out, okay, how God has called us to this work. I trust and believe that everything will be well, but we can't depend upon the big systems. It is us, and I strongly believe in the faith community. I believe in grassroots organizations that have a liberated mindset. We are the change. We are. We have the power, we have the influence, we have the means to make a significant difference in this world. And so I just want to empower you and encourage you all to follow the calling and the pull on your heart. If the Lord is speaking to you and saying to you to move. So thank you so much for this time. I appreciate you, and I look forward to the panel.
Okay, well, thank you, Cecily. Okay, next we have Andrew Reginald Hairston. Did you grow up in Louisiana? Did I have that right? North Carolina. Okay. Okay. Anyway, as he grew up, his father was a pastor. So I think he feels right at home with all us church ladies. Is that right? Okay. He is a civil rights attorney and writer based in Austin. Since 2019, he has directed Texas Appleseed's Education Justice Project, which was formerly called the School to Prison Pipeline Project. In his capacity at Texas Appleseed, he supports campaigns to end the school to prison pipeline, and he has testified on various education issues before the Texas legislature and school boards across the state. He is also engaged in discussions about the work he does at different places such as Harvard Law School, New York University, the University of Texas, Rice University, and Brooklyn Law School. He frequently offers commentary in traditional media outlets, such as the Wall Street Journal, probably heard of that one, the Austin American-Statesman, the Texas Standard, the Texas Tribune, the Dallas Morning News, the Hetchinger Report, and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and the 74. Andrew previously worked for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law and Advancement Project in D.C. Along with Kim Irby, he co-chairs the coordinating committee of the National Dignity in Schools campaign. He holds degrees from Howard University and Louisiana State University. He's licensed to practice law in Texas and Louisiana. So that's where I got that. Okay, so Andrew, come, tell us more. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, comrades. You're getting a flavor of what this is going to be like. I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Thank you for that gracious introduction, Wendy, and to Minerva and Cecily, thank you so much for your work. You're actualizing these principles of justice, immigrant justice, to address the harms of borders and imperialism, reproductive justice to understand that every person has a human right to have a child or not have a child. When they have that child, to raise that child in a loving, safe, and supportive community. I'm grateful to greet you to talk about the education justice work that I'm doing. I serve many roles. Thank you for that introduction, Wendy. Probably most relevant is that of a socialist minister. This is relatively new. I am a deacon at Ebenezer Third Baptist Church in Austin, Texas. And about 8 months ago, I told my parents, sister, and niece that I have accepted the call to ministry. But, thank you. But I have not done much other than just do more church service work and speak at wonderful events like this. So pray with me as I embark on this exciting new journey. Yes, I'll be brief with this intro, but like Wendy said, I am a writer and a civil rights lawyer in Austin. I graduated from Louisiana State University in 2016. My mother was born and raised in Tallulah, Louisiana, and although I only lived in Baton Rouge for those 3 years of law school, Louisiana does feel like a significant part of where home is for me. So yeah, coming up on 9 years of practice this year, and yeah, 6 years at Texas Appleseed, which is pretty unbelievable, doing this work with a team now of 3 other lawyers, one who has a similar level of experience as me, and 2 new lawyers who graduated from law school in 2024, and who have joined us with the support of external funding. We can move forward. Or next slide. I'll be stuck. I'm trying to think of what comes next. Yes. So I am very grateful for this, right, to think about socialism, the boogeyman, and how it applies to this specific work, faith-based organizing, social justice advocacy in 2025. Public school is a public good, and it feels like one of those last remaining public goods in America in 2025. We have a lot of work to do over the next 50, 100, 150 years, but in this moment we are called to preserve that right to a public education for all children. Thank you. Thank you. We recognize that 5.5 million children were enrolled in Texas public schools in the 2022-23 academic year. There are over 1,000 independent school districts in Texas. And the enrollment in Texas public schools has increased over the past decade. This is a point that will come up a little bit later. But in the face of local governmental bodies or the state legislature saying that enrollment is declining, I offer their own data to them that public school students aren't going anywhere, and they're increasing in number. We can go to the next slide. So I've been thinking about education for a long time. To mention my mother again, right? So father is a Baptist minister who is celebrating nearly 40 years in the ministry, coming up in 2027. My mother was in corporate America when my sister and I were younger, but is now an assistant principal in a middle school in Oklahoma City Public Schools. Yeah, it's such a beautiful, yeah. My parents are inspiring for me in many ways, but that second act for her is especially inspiring. And kind of thinking about some work that we have done at Texas Appleseed over the past year and a half, we examined the community of Beaumont and the intense racial segregation that exists in schools and housing in that community, and also thinking about the ways in which the U.S. government has endorsed these pernicious forms of racism. They think about the San Antonio versus Rodriguez decision that originated in Texas that sets this unequal funding structure for schools, that the property tax revenue is the thing that funds schools when you have subjected these communities to so much divestment, so much disinvestment for decades, for centuries. And we're contending with the last legislative session during the 88th regular legislative session in response to Uvalde. The Texas legislature passed HB 3 in 2023, which requires an armed security officer on every campus across the state. And generally, we now have this unaddressed legacy of the pandemic, right? There is this push to not talk about it, to say that the coronavirus pandemic didn't happen, or that it's not having ripple effects currently in 2025. But I think that is showing up very acutely in our work to secure a quality public education for every child and make sure that it's accessible and truly thorough for them. We can go to the next slide. So you gotta think about Beaumont, which is such an interesting community, and Fort Worth or Dallas or San Antonio, you could look, copy and paste certain pieces of this history to various cities across Texas and the United States. But black schools were founded during the Reconstruction period, right, from 1865 to 1877. Black people have always been clear, and education is something that we desire, that we view as a human right, and that we will prioritize and sometimes sacrifice our well-being to make sure that our children have. There were schools created in Baptist churches in Beaumont and kind of outgrowths from those schools, like the Adams School in Beaumont. And through a mysterious conflagration, through a fire, it burned down in the late 19th century. And I'll leave you to think of what the cause of that could have been. And 100 years ago, nearly 100 years ago, the Texas legislature passed SB 275, which mandated black and white segregation across the state. This is recent history. My maternal grandmother was born in 1926. My maternal grandfather was born in 1900. There's a full story there. But within 3 generations, right, currently, within the past 125 years, this is what we're contending with. And so your commitment, like Cecily said, to that proclamation of Micah, to do justice, to love mercy, is so important in this moment. And to address this long history of zoning laws, of redlining, creating and sustaining this segregation in 2025. We can go to the next slide. Okay, I think about Beaumont, and this is where I'll come back to the piece of enrollment increasing in public schools over the past decade. I was just in San Antonio a week and a half ago to stand with parent organizers who were protesting the closures of 3 of their schools in Northeast Independent School District, 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. And often the legislature or local school boards will say, well, we have declining enrollment, declining birth rates, the schools are underutilized, and it really just is flabbergasting to think of these business principles applied to a public good, to a public school. This is not a business. This is not a private institution. This is a community institution that serves each child, regardless of race, income, or the zip code. And there is an incalculable benefit to that being present, easily accessible to these young folks. And so in Beaumont, we saw some long conversations about school district consolidations, about the community standing vociferously against plans to consolidate schools and have schools closed, state takeovers like the one that exists in Houston. The Houston Board of Managers currently has been reflected in the past 15 years in Beaumont with a state takeover. And so we have to be vigilant to push back at the local level. Unfortunately, the Northeast ISD Board of Trustees moved forward with this decision to close these 3 beloved community institutions. And we certainly know about the debate going on at the Texas legislature now. But to speak out at all levels is so important for us. Next slide. So think of the school-to-prison pipeline, right? What I've been thinking about and sleeping, breathing, eating for the past decade. can largely be described as this interwoven net of policies and practices from that unaddressed legacy of racism across the United States that targets young people, especially historically underserved young people, black and brown children, LGBTQ young people, kids with disabilities, for age-appropriate behavior, for struggling after a pandemic, for having to work to support their families, for grieving a beloved uncle or aunt or grandparent who died during COVID, and then having maybe some manifestation of grief in their school. And then the school to prison pipeline comes to say that we're not going to treat you with humanity, not with dignity, but to push you out for age-appropriate routine behavior and responses to these global stressors. And it has only grown stronger over the past 75 years in particular through a hardening of schools, through over-investments in school policing, like HB 3 from 2 years ago, which any district will tell you they cannot meet. The legislature gave schools $15,000 to employ every school police officer on the campus, and by conservative estimates for a local school police department to hire an officer, it takes $80,000 to pay that person's salary and fringe benefits. And then also the system of exclusionary discipline, where alternative education placements, this is actually important. Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code is 30 this year. George W. Bush signed the School Safety Act of Texas into law in 1995, which created disciplinary alternative education programs and various forms of push-out, honestly, for young people in their schools. And instead of reacting with a compassionate response to a young person having a bad day, it'll be a placement in a DAP, disciplinary alternative education program, a long suspension, and maybe an expulsion, depending on the circumstance. We can go to the next slide. And so I gotta think about school policing in particular. This, especially over the past 85 years, roughly 85 years, you saw the first school police officers appear in the US, likely in Indianapolis in the late 1930s. And it was coded differently. Maybe they were called school safety agents. But especially in the 1950s, they grew in intensity. And these are the early days of the civil rights movement. And you see across even that 15-year period, let's say from 1954 to 1969, this increasing reliance upon a school policing infrastructure. And there are, federal things that are happening and winds that are moving. And I will be bipartisan in my critiques, right? We moved from Kennedy to Johnson to Nixon, right? But especially as we get to the beginning of the Nixon administration, we see this hardened rhetoric and this idea of investments in policing to deal with the social problems of America. And certainly it was a response to those young people who were raising up their voices against injustices during the civil rights movement, in a response to say, because you spoke about your right to human dignity in your schools, you will be met with more suspensions, met with more school police. As of now, probably in 2025, there are tens of thousands of school police officers who patrol campuses across the country. Certainly that has increased with HB 3 here in Texas. And these are multi-million-dollar budgets that they have. I mentioned over 1,000 school districts in Texas. At least 200 of them have their own internal school police departments. You can go to the next slide. So you gotta think about education justice organizing. I love this room for its intergenerational nature, right? Folks can probably reflect on what they were doing 50 years ago, maybe 75 years ago, trying to seek justice, to do mercy. And to think about those youth organizers who existed in 1960 or 1990 or 2020, who were speaking out about the same demand, and tying it back to those folks during Reconstruction, newly emancipated people who were prioritizing education in their communities. And knowing that this is a long legacy that continues, And this intergenerational model is a source of great hope for us as we are fighting for the preservation and strengthening of public education in Texas. But it does not come without the backlash. Minerva, thank you so much for sharing your story of your journey to American citizenship and the really special moment of voting in 2020 for the first time. But not to be too partisan, I'm sorry that we're back here, right, with the person who's in place currently in the Oval Office. But regardless of that, regardless of the winds that continue to flow in this country and the backlash to any perceived progress of this multiracial working class movement for human dignity that I would call ourselves, we must continue to invest in the youth organizing, the intergenerational organizing, the houses of worship like this, and the faith organizing collectives like UWF to sustain those ongoing calls for dignity and for the right to a quality public education for every child. Next, let's go to the next slide. So, some corrective actions to kind of wrap up. I'm very clear, I'll talk about this more in the breakout, but I'm very informed by the knowledge of Black women organizers like Dr. Angela White Davis, Miriam Kaba, Dr. Ruth Wilson Gilmore, who have identified the prison industrial complex, this multi-billion-dollar infrastructure in the United States that targets Black and brown folks primarily and places them in cages. And the abolition of it that has been articulated by these brilliant women is what informs my work. And I am of the position that you can't reform school policing. You can't give them more bias training. You can't, give them a greater understanding of child development. They are there to move forward with the origins of policing in America, to be slave patrollers, to union bust, to protect white people's private property. And so we have to do away with that institution in particular in our schools. To think about restorative justice, those honest and authentic conversations, right? Having the one-on-one or the community-led conversations about the real trauma that people face and the real difficulties that they endure. And having that abundant grace and compassion in classrooms across Texas. And even if a kid has a bad day, like we all have had multiple bad days, and not shown up into spaces sometimes, with, the full well-intent that we wanted, to say that you're not gonna be pushed out of school, even if you have a bad day, or even if you act out in a tough circumstance. And to equitably fund public schools, and to say this is a right, it does not turn on business principles. Thank you. Thank you. You can't evaluate it like a business. And often, the hypocrisies come up, y'all, the paradox of it all, because they will close the schools like they did in San Antonio, and then at least for a school year, the school building will sit there, and the district is footing that bill, and nobody's using it, and so you're paying for it anyway while you're busing kids 45 minutes or an hour away to a new school. So equitably funding those schools in the community to make sure every child has that right, and every parent and community member. And to center the voices of, I'll be frank, Black children in particular, but Black and brown children in this fight for education justice organizing, to talk about their very real experiences and real harms to advance the notion of quality public schools for all. And I think that might be it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So this has been so beautiful. I'm so glad this is recorded. I'm going to pass this around to my parents. They're like, see, I'm moving forward with this goal to be a minister, But thank you all, and I look forward to this Q&A part and to our Love in Action sessions later on.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, this has been very informative, and I know that Deb, who's arranged the flow of the day, is probably a little nervous because we're a few minutes past, but we're flexible, and lunch had some good time in there. We're going to be okay. Okay, so it's not on your lovely little program, but we have a few announcements. We're going to go to questions first for the three of you. If you'd like to come up and just sit behind the table. If you have, where's Tanisha? You want to use this? Tanisha's is a member of the Charter for Racial Justice Group Committee that worked on planning this event. If you have a question, yes, over here, Lynn, she'll come to you with so we can all hear. The microphones will work great here.
All right, so I have two. It's a twofold question. What current legislation would create additional challenges for your group or cause? And what are those challenges? And what current legislation would be beneficial to your group or cause? And what are the benefits you might experience?
Oh my Lord, yes, help us. Oh man, every time. The legislature is the only thing. I am so grateful for my tenure at Texas Appleseed, but it's the only thing that remotely could get me fired because I'm like, I don't want to go in that building, but so much. So we actually just this week got a slate of education policy bills that were introduced by Speaker Burrows. We're still analyzing them on my team, but one is HB 6, which I encourage folks to look at. It's kind of styled as a teacher bill of rights, and this is a really tough part of this organizing for us because, you know, the powers that be will often frame it as, well, this needs to be an opportunity for teachers to control their classroom, and things are out of control. And this is a unique moment where we need to have more zero tolerance policies in place. And one part of HB 6 that feels particularly concerning is the notion that there are currently school-based threat assessments that are in Texas. They passed in 2019. And the idea is that if a young person makes a threat or says something on social media that alarms the school, this school-based threat assessment team, which is usually comprised of multiple people from various disciplines, will do an evaluation to see, did the kid have the means to carry out the threat? Like, do they have a history? You know, is this a credible threat being made? And with HB 6 as it's currently written, it would be easier for a school district to seek leave of court or a court action to put a kid into an alternative education program placement, which feels like a deprivation of their rights in the process. Last session in 2023, we had a law that passed that gives parents more of a right in that threat assessment process and allows them to submit evidence to offer the mitigating factors, right? And to say my kid might have said something in jest and in ill taste, but they wouldn't carry out a threat. And we're trying to advocate for more of those procedural due process bills for threat assessments. And I'll briefly wrap up and say that my team and I are shopping around some bills for the 30th anniversary of the Texas Education Code of Chapter 37 in particular, and trying to generally increase due process in the disciplinary alternative education program placement process to give more of a right for parents to be present at the hearing that puts the kids into a DAEP, because that's not required currently, in state law. To limit the infractions that can put a kid into a DAEP, like a dress code violation. Folks might have heard of Darrell George in Chambers County. for his locks, has consistently been pushed out of his classroom, and to generally not have off-campus conduct influence the DAEP placement process. Because currently, if a kid is at the mall on Saturday and they get into trouble, on Monday, the principal can come and say, you did this, didn't have anything to do with school, and we're going to punish you for bad conduct. So we're optimistic that we can get some of these bills picked up and move them through the process.
Do you want to speak? I wish that I had an answer for you. It literally, it's like every day, what's next? Yeah. So, I mean, with DEI, I just don't know. So what we're trying to focus on is just the work and just staying on task. We're literally taking everything day by day. And just like I mentioned, we definitely have been impacted with federal dollars, but we're just unsure right now.
I'm going to insert something. Well, many of us know about Texas Impact, and we rely on them to keep us informed as people of faith. But one of their priority issues is urging legislators to decriminalize evidence-based health care wherein physicians are treating a life-threatening medical emergency during pregnancy. And so today, this is like a mini commercial announcement. So today we have our Fix It postcards, and I can't tell you what to do, but I'm sure you do not want to leave these premises today without signing one of these and leaving it with someone who will return it to Austin. We're going to have, we have someone here, Marilee, that's working with this project, and she's going to do one of the breakout sessions. So I thought it fit there. Okay.
So I have a question, but first I want to honor the three of you. You've blessed us so much by your stories. I'm sorry, what?
Well, since she asked, we have also postcards that I'm going to have in my display table. You want to sign up and just write whatever you want, just change immigration laws.
You know, I was just going to say, my privilege has allowed me to be a leader in all kinds of different ways. And I want to know how to be a better ally, because I could be some kind of a target because I don't have as much to lose. And I feel it's so important to know what you need so that you can carry forth this beautiful work. So.
Before you ask your question, I just wanted to raise a point that I'm so glad that Cecily uplifted during her presentation of de-siloing movement work. I'm starting to get more into the reproductive justice work myself. I just began last month my service as a member of the board of directors of the Frontera Fund, which is the abortion fund for the Rio Grande Valley. And to kind of think of this work of ensuring that maternal health is prioritized through a racial justice lens. There's so many pieces that criminalize black women as they are seeking to start their families and raise their children in dignity. And also kind of think about the infrastructure of, child protective services and the ease with which black women will be targeted for whatever perceived infraction and have their children taken away from them when they're here. And so certainly donating to Abide, and kind of putting the money up there, but also thinking of these various interlocking harms that folks are facing and continually just showing up in spaces like these and giving your time and money and your support for this de-siloing of movement work.
Hi, I want to echo what she said. It's so wonderful to have the three of you here. And I would almost like to ask all three of you something, but Andrew, I want to ask you, I'm from the Duncanville area, and they have a huge amount of policing at the Duncanville High School. And when I mention this to my women in my little group, they all say, well, you know, they're there because those kids are bad, and when they're bad, the police have to be there. Let me back up and say, I raised one of those, quote, bad children, and who was suspended from school many times, and likely because he was Caucasian, maybe there was a difference, but I will say that we did not get the help that we needed, period. The kids, whether it be the pandemic or their lifestyle or family or whatever it is, also we are not getting the help we need for our children mental health-wise. And I don't know how we get that, but I guess my question is, how do I tell these ladies that just because a policeman there doesn't mean these kids are wild, rowdy? My husband worked for 10 years in a school system. There was a police officer on campus, and he's not a small man, but he had 2 incidences in his classrooms where people got into issues. He had another instance where somebody stole something that was very valuable from his classroom. Never did he have to get the police officers involved because he had trained how to deal with those issues. And so that's another thing that I think that we need to do. And the last thing is, I want to ask you, what if a kid got in trouble and not their parent, but what if we had a volunteer, like we have CASA volunteers? What if we could volunteer to go and be with that kid during all this, I have to pick a better word, during all these things that are going on with them, and they're sitting in front of the police. I was there as a mother, sitting in front of the police officer, and I could barely handle it myself. So what can we as public go and help?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for all of those questions. I'll start with you first. Yeah, I love it. I love it. The frame is so important. Okay, all right, be quick. Okay, one point to the example of Uvalde, right? In May 2022, hundreds of various law enforcement agents from all of these agencies were there and didn't stop 19 children and 2 teachers from dying. And the legislature was very aware of that as they passed HB 3, but is so committed to this law and order narrative that has been debunked that, you know, they are bankrupting their surplus trying to prove a point. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And in general, I'll kind of marry my last answers for the sake of time. So Eve L. Ewing is a sociologist in Chicago who actually just came out with a new book, I believe called Unoriginal Sins. But she wrote a book called Ghosts in the Schoolyard, probably in 2019, that was so instructive to my work to document the school closures in Chicago in 2014 under Rahm Emanuel, a Democrat, and the racial justice fight that ensued after. And she articulates a lot of principles, but the idea that the community is the school and the school is the community is such sage wisdom from that. And I encourage folks, to the extent that you can, that, you know, maybe folks are retired and your children are grown, but get engaged with campus advisory councils, district advisory councils, show up to that school, say, I'm just here to be present as an elder. That is a principle that Eve L. Ewing articulates that I think is so important. Me as a non-parent myself, I'm trying to engage more in Austin ISD and community service in that way, because these are my children too. And they deserve, you know, responsive adults on their campus and who have been through it, who had challenges with their children and who can relate to them on a human level and kind of talk through the challenges. And again, prove your husband's point that I don't need the police to handle these various conflicts that come up.
Good morning. I am currently a senior in high school, and we have 2, maybe 3 resource officers in our school of 3,000. And the thing is, we had a kid commit a violent felony this year, and he was not sent to alternative school. And the only reason he doesn't go to school is because Wiley, as much as there's a lot of people, it's a small town, and everyone knew. But also the question is, if the police aren't really doing anything on campus, how do we get rid of them? Because because as far as I know, they just walk around and talk to the APs. And what can we, like, because the thing is, like, as much as they're like, it's to protect students, new law says every student has to be behind a locked door at all times. The TA comes and tries to get into the school and force their way into the school, see if they could, if someone could. I mean, there's talk about giving teachers guns. Like, what can we do to keep the school safe without resource officers who aren't helping?
I thank you so much for your question and your presence and your attendance, yes, and your perspective. Right, so to kind of follow up that answer I just offered, and sorry for hogging all this Q&A time, but I would push you and your fellow classmates to kind of document among yourselves the complete waste of resources that it is to have those 3 police officers on campus. Y'all are probably paying $250,000 for them to be there and not doing anything. And there might be nuance in that first point you made that, you know, there was a felony committed and maybe they didn't intervene in that, right? So you can emphasize that point to your principal and to your school board that even when they're supposed to respond to an emergency, they're not doing that, right? And I also would urge folks, like, if you're in community, if you're in school, to kind of push for your local campus to do more data collection around the incidents where school police are involved. There is no current state mandate that districts report to the Texas Education Agency school police incidents generally. And we're also trying to push that in the legislature, hopefully over the next couple of sessions. But yeah, try to push your principal, or even as a community group, a school-based group yourself, just like writing down what they're doing or not doing, kind of showing in real time that this is not the investment that we need to create supportive schools. And I also encourage all folks, we'll talk about it more after lunch, to come to the legislature. I hope that folks will remain in touch with me, especially over email. I think it's so important in this political moment to get multiracial, working class coalitions to the legislature to talk about what's actually happening in communities across the state and speak out against these unproven proposals that are being offered by the Texas legislature. And although it's prohibitive and you can be in those committee hearings for hours, to have your voice on the public record, even for 2 minutes, can be such an impactful thing in this process.
Okay, I have inserting another mini commercial. Okay, that here. Okay, one moment. There are some of these posters in the resource room. This is Family Matters. It's Faith Days at the Capitol in Austin, which is another Texas Impact event. By the way, when the United Women in Faith have their legislative event in late April every year, that is their largest event. And this year we blew past, like doubled January, yeah, we doubled our attendance. So people are interested, but this is another similar thing. So I got a message this morning on my way. I have it in my phone. Please tell them that Faith Days at the Capitol, March 16th to 18th this year. It is different than, maybe I have it here. Yeah, it's different than our legislative event. They are going to talk to, these are the subjects they're going to focus on: maternal health, reproductive policy, children's health, public education, voting rights, environmental justice. It's just a crucial time in the session for legislative visits. And so in a little different way, but if you were there in January at the UWF legislative event, you've started building a relationship with your elected officials. And as people of faith, it is entirely appropriate for you to tell them, I have faith values, I have family values, and it is this. So there you go. If there are a couple more of these flyers, aren't they in the resource room? Yes, okay. Oh yes, QR code here, and you'll probably hear more about it in the newsletter. Okay. Now, maybe just one more. Can we do one more picture, one more question? She already
Absolutely.
stated, yeah.
Okay, I want to follow up on the conversation about education, and this goes to you, Andrew. I'm sorry, Cecily actually said something earlier about, we've been admiring the problem for a long, long time, but we don't have any viable solutions. And we need to focus on viable solutions, and there are viable solutions. One of those is social and emotional learning in schools. It's an evidence-based practice that has been implemented in many schools and has been highly successful in reducing the disproportionate treatment of children of color and children with disabilities. But in our state, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but Governor Abbott has issued a moratorium on social emotional learning. He won't acknowledge it, but he sent over the mandate over to Commissioner Morath, the TEA commissioner, and told him that all education service centers in Texas had to remove any references to social and emotional learning. They had to remove that from any trainings they were doing, from any materials that they had, any resources. So I sent an email to Commissioner Morath's office, and the only response I got was they sent it over to the legal department, and the legal department said, just go to the website and look at our behavior page. They're not acknowledging it, and yet there are 7 places in the Texas Education Code that mandates it. So how can the governor and the commissioner usurp the law? That's illegal. So, well, it's in our state education code. So,
the statement.
So that's my question to you. What are we doing about this? Because it is a viable solution.
For sure. They're like, they turn this into the Andrew Harrison show. No. Cecily also made the point about DEI just now, and you know what they're doing. Critical race theory, DEI, social emotional learning, banning black people in particular from existing, participating in the democracy, right? So on and so forth, right? So community care is going to have to be what gets us through this. And that local engagement, right? And that mutual aid, right? Funding one another, loving one another, showing up for each other, because they are clear, y'all. And he has moved with swift decisiveness over this past month, and he's going to keep moving, right? But I think us being in this space is such an antidote to fascism and to them trying to ban people by banning terms, right? And so, yeah, I encourage you to engage in that advocacy and write the letters and show up at the legislature. But this is the work right here, y'all. And y'all showing up on this Saturday and y'all going back to your houses of worship tomorrow, like I will, and continually talking about the radically inclusive, loving message of Jesus Christ. Amen. That no one is excluded. So yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I'm going to enter in that just like he was just saying, that applies to immigration as well. Yeah. So there are places in, Minerva is working with the place she told us about in San Antonio, but in your area there is something, whether it's meeting buses or something. There's something, so we need to find out. And the question about, we have I mean, even somebody had a question about being with the children who maybe are in court, and there are ways, and if there isn't a way, these people figure out to make a way. So, and that's our charge. So, okay, I think that was, they're pleading with me, and I'm getting no from the back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so now we have a couple of announcements. I want to tell you how the rest of the day is going to work, the plan. We do have lunch waiting, but it's boxed lunch, so it's not getting cold. It's fine. I want you to know you each have in your program, you have a copy of the Charter for Racial Justice. This is the Charter for Racial Justice event, an annual event, and we do have well, I'm going to tell you about those in a minute. But first, I want to say, I'm going to tell you about Table Talk in a minute, but first I'm going to make the announcement of our 2025 conference mission project. So this is the announcement, and I just forgot to make a spot for it in the program. So, oh, well, he already blew the surprise. Well, there you go. We're moving ahead. Okay, it was a difficult decision your conference team made, your conference team and district presidents. We had a special meeting about this and discussed a few different options. And because we are all coming together, we seriously wanted to have a project, a mission project that was beyond Horizon, not just in one corner of Horizon, because we all will be and are and should be in mission in our own neighborhoods and areas as well. So this Jerry Savito Center for Girls is a safe haven for girls escaping forced marriage and female genital mutilation, which is often referred to as FGM because it's hard to say, in Western Kenya. These girls now have a loving place to live, go to school, and they are thriving. Right now, there are currently 72 Jerry Savito girls. This mission began in 2020 as a partnership with Women in Kenya, led by Pauline Natamura, the United Women in Faith, in what is now included in the Horizon Texas Conference, and the family and friends of Jerry Savito. It was a district event that pulled up this subject matter, and they asked me to be part of it, to do part of the little program. And so in June of 2020, when I couldn't see my friends, I was making friends with the women in Western Kenya, which just kind of blew my mind. But see that house, this is the center. It now is, since June of 2020, that has been built in Western Kenya, and the girls find their ways there. Because the girls are motivated, they want to go to school, they don't want to basically be trafficked or given to some old guy for another wife. So the Jerry Savito Center needs funding for ongoing needs of the girls, including food, water, clothing, health care, school tuition, and staff salaries. And there's an urgent need for a security fence around the campus to keep the girls safe from those parents who want them back and could force them to return to an unsafe situation. So for more you will get more information. This is just the announcement. So today there is a Jerry Savito Center display in the Fellowship Hall. So go and see that. And I will also tell you that 3 people from Horizon Texas are on the board, 3 UWF. Cynthia Reeves is the chair of that board. Joyce Whiteley, who's also here, and she'll be at the table probably, and myself as your president. That's a position I am there. So if you'd like to have a program about the Jerry Savito Center, contact Cynthia and we'll make that happen. We'll help you find a way. Okay, another thing, I already talked about that one. Great, knock them off. I want to say thank you to Manuel, who's from the church and taking some great pictures for us. We also, and Janet is kind of helping him, direct him, which is great. Janet, stand up just so if you want a picture, she's the one that'll help make it happen. So, and we also had another photographer here that came from ProPublica. Yes, and she's here, but also you have a writer, I assume, the journalist. And I said that was okay because we just need more people talking about this, right? So okay. And so I thank all of them, and I want to say, because we have the possibility of some great pictures, we'd like the speakers to stay here as you leave for lunch, so we can get some speaker ones, and then also the Charter for Racial Justice team, that would be great if we could be up here with the speakers. And then in the fellowship hall, which is wonderfully crowded, we're going to ask in a few minutes for the conference leadership team to come up so we can take a picture, great picture. The lighting's better down there, and that'll be fine. So even if we interrupt your lunch, that'll be fine. So when you leave here, it'll just take a moment. And as you leave here, there are of course restrooms, but go choose your box lunch. There's ham sandwiches, turkey sandwiches, vegetarian lunches, and gluten-free lunches. And pick that up, and you should have, I don't have my name, you have a color sticker on your name tag, and whatever color you've got, look for a table with someone who's going to be holding a paper that is that color. And some of you have been asked to be table facilitators, which is just really to keep the conversation going. We have a few questions that will help you digest, because it's lunch, what we've heard here today. And so resist the urge, be brave. Don't sit with the same people you go to church with and rode all the way to Fort Worth with. Sit with different people so that you can get some new ideas. So if you've got an orange table, there's several orange tables, so you can be brave, girls. Okay. Okay, so now you understand, and I want to say a really big thank you to Texas Appleseed for being our lunch sponsor. That is, yes. He said that he was, well, I'm speaking for you, although he said a lot, but that he was really impressed with how we were bringing these three subjects to light and how they intertwined and such, and he wanted to support that. And Texas Appleseed could. So I say we need to all be looking at Texas Appleseed ourselves and seeing what else they do. So that's great. Okay, so remember to, at any time, you can go to the restroom, but also you can visit the Abide Mobile Clinic, which is outside, and the UW Faith Resource Room, in case you missed that, is down the hall across from the resource room. And the mission displays, each one of these people have a mission display, so you can pick up a brochure or what have you, and there are others. Okay, now Connie's dying to say something. Yes.
This is quick. When we got back from legislative event, immigration was really heavy on our hearts, and it is everyone in this room. I felt it's important while we're all together just to talk to you about these cards. They're called Know Your Rights card. We bought 1,000 of them for $110 at First United Methodist Plano. We're giving them out to folks, and just be aware, if you want to see what they look like, stop and see me. But it's something we all ought to have in our churches and be passing out to folks that we think might want them.
Thank you very much. We were going to have those, but we called too late. We couldn't get them here in time, so we just didn't. But that's great. And there is a statement about, I can't remember what, where's Deb? Anyway, there's a statement in the resource room about that issue. Social principles, right, about dealing with that issue. And so there's, even if you don't want to buy a book, go into this resource room, because there are some free resources, including our resources page, information, lots of program ideas in there, and it will be listed on the website because there are some links that don't do much for you on a piece of paper. Okay, so let's say how about Karen's going to give us a quick little blessing for our lunch, and I'm going to point out that somehow we forgot to include taking an offering, so maybe we'll just put something out in the lunchroom, and yeah, you see it, you throw a little money, and it'd go to Pledge to Mission. Yeah, that would go to Pledge for Mission. What? Nothing. Okay.
Social. Wow. We are so blessed to have been filled with the food of what these people are doing and how we can help. And I don't know about you, but that makes me hungry. So let's bow our heads. Gracious God, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for the people who are here to speak with us. And we are thankful for all of our sisters and brothers who are here with us. We ask you to bless us as we move into our lunch. Bless the food and bless those whose hands prepared it. And we ask you to be with us as we move into our small sessions and touch our hearts in the spots that you know are there for the various groups who are represented. In the name of the one who taught us to love, amen.
Thank you, and be sure and look at your lunch breakout sessions, 11 action sessions. Once again, try to divvy up, split up your church so you take back different ideas. Yes. And I want you to realize this is the New Horizon Texas Conference. Yay! Well, because you're on the committee, yes, stay. I think.
I love summer fellowship Thank you. Send it to my parents.
So I came up there talking.
Do you want to share with me or?
So we're gonna.
So is our whole leadership team?
Yeah.
No, this is just the three and you're
Yeah.
the speakers. That's a good start.